History shapes everything we do and everything we believe. Across the centuries, a few have written the stories of humanity, and in doing so, have silenced countless others. Choke Points Through Time is where those voices are heard again. Join Dr. Wayne Sedlak, linguist, scholar of ancient languages and history, pastor, former missionary to Africa, graduate school dean, and professor, as he opens the door to our forgotten past. From the tablets of lost civilizations to the chronicles of empires long fallen, discover the truths history tried to hide and the forces that still shape our world today. Choke Points Through Time, a journey through the pivotal moments of mankind's story. This is history as you've never heard it before. And now, here is Dr. Wayne Sedlak.
Hello again. I'd like to welcome you to yet another Choke Points Through Time. In this particular episode, we're going to see what researchers outside the Bible have to say about much of the occult phenomena, and what they said back in the 60s still rings true today. These were humanistic researchers, scientists in their own right, who studied the effects of UFOs in particular, but also other occult phenomena. I think you'd be surprised as to the conclusions they came to. Many in their fields, many of their colleagues, walked away from these conclusions, but shared them nonetheless privately. We're talking about the likes of Dr. Jacques Vallee, Doctors Jordan and Clark of what became at that time the Midwest UFO Network. It became the Mutual UFO Network today. They take reports on UFO sightings around the world. The network became so large, it went international, in fact, after 1973. Dr. Donna Higby, hypnotherapist, drew some conclusions back then, and other doctors, as we'll see. What were their conclusions? What is it that they saw that Christians, well, it took a while for Christians to understand. You see, the world isn't entirely confused concerning the nature of UFOs. They may not directly say it is Satan. That, I believe, is a biblical conclusion. But they do agree that these are malevolent beings. They are strategic in their appearances. They have a definite agenda. And in fact, that agenda is being carried out throughout the world on a massive scale. Dr. Jacques Vallee was a well-known reporter and researcher. He started studying the UFO phenomenon in the 1960s. He said the phenomenon behaved like a conditioning process. The logic of conditioning uses obscurity and confusion to achieve its goal while hiding its mechanism. I could see a similar structure in the UFO stories. I'm beginning to perceive a coherent picture of the flying saucer phenomenon for the first time, now that I am pursuing the idea that UFOs may be a psychological control system, now that I am aware of their link to human consciousness. Did you hear that? He would go on to write of the Trojan Horse effect of UFOs. It's a Trojan Horse strategic operation. Now, I understand what he means by a Trojan horse. You might recall that from the Iliad, the work of the Iliad and the Odyssey. You know, the Iliad where during the battle between the Greeks that invaded Troy, the city of Troy, actually its territory, they left. They appeared to be leaving after prolonged besieging that was unsuccessful. and they left the gift of a large horse that could be wheeled into Troy. So the story went. Hence the Trojan Horse. Inside the Trojan Horse, laying carefully inside, were soldiers. Their job, once the people of Troy went to sleep, their job was to come out and open the gates, which is exactly what they did. Hence the term Trojan Horse. For Jacques Vallee, this is a Trojan Horse operation. For Donna Higby, Dr. Donna Higby was a hypnotherapist during those years, and she studied many abductee, people that claimed to have been abducted by UFOs. Concentrating on the UFOs, but other occult phenomena figured into this, but I'll concentrate on the UFOs for now in all of these researchers. She came to the conclusion as a hypnotherapist that what she was seeing was a consistent pattern of altered personalities. In other words, that people were never the same. Now, we'll deal with that never the same in a minute, because that actually is not the correct conclusion. She's very, very good, very close, but something else can re-alter or bring back the individual. We'll deal with that. Now, individuals like those of MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, Doctors Jordan and Clark, they drew some conclusions too in dealing with abductee phenomenon. So let's put all this together. But before I do that, I'm going to go to what would appear to be unrelated. A great free market economist and a member of the legislature of France during the mid-1800s. His name was Frederick Bastiat. He was very much alone. It was the brilliance of his conclusions. And when I say alone, I meant as far as the political conclusions and of a free market, leave the market alone. He stood pretty much by himself. Other legislators would steer France into socialism, different kinds of socialism. In fact, France would be wrecked by the wars that would follow. Bastiat warned the French nation. He stood alone. But what kept him was the power of his writings. He was an exceptional writer. He wrote articles in the French press. He wrote pamphlets. He wrote books. Frederick Bastiat identified the reasons for his opposition to a socialist regime. Now, understand, what's that got to do with UFOs? He didn't address the issue of UFOs. Well, in a sense, he did. And we'll deal with that again and tie all this together. But let me give you Bastiat's conclusions. Frederick Bastiat watched the antics, the tactics, the strategies of the socialists in France, drawing on the immense prestige and genius of the Huguenots that once were the backbone of the French economy. And when I say once, I mean about 150, not quite 200 years before Bastiat. But Bastiat drew on their thinking. The residue of their thinking did affect many in the nation. Men like J.H. Merle d'Aubigné, for example, the great French historian, and others of that French school in the early 1800s, French school of thought as an historian. You see, there was that residue of a free market society by the Huguenots. They were driven out by King Louis XIV. In fact, he was a centralist. Monarchical socialism, the monarchy, l'état c'est moi, I am the state. It's this famous statement. So you have a monarchy that is socialistic, meaning the monarchy acts like other socialist states. It seizes control of the economy. It regulates it. It controls it, taxes. It seizes upon the capital goods. By capital goods, I mean money, but especially machinery, control of the land, machinery, the tools of production, regulating profitability, regulating markets. Now, Bastiat, of course, was opposed to all that. But he studied the socialists of his day. And he drew several conclusions. He said, first of all, they claimed to be humanitarian. By the way, the researchers, Donna, Higby, Jacques Vallee, those at MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, drew the same conclusion. Very often, abductees are taught of the benevolent intentions of those that would possess them. In any event, Bastiat noticed that they always claimed to be the ones that will bring mankind into, well, it's called a worker's paradise. He said, but they really aren't lovers of mankind. In fact, he said, they hate mankind. What they're in love with are men, artificial constructs, men and women of their own imagination, who have been manipulated, controlled, and transformed into something other than what is normally human. They try to do it through the laws, regulations, and sometimes outright war, terror, starvation, and other means. They're not benefactors of humanity. They are interested in the construction of an artificial personality. Furthermore, they have no problem constructing an artificial science of economics, the money science. They'll manipulate the money science and they will break, they will savage, they will destroy lives, disrupt homes, ruin careers, all in the name of necessity, to bring about using these artificially created individuals, meaning Pavlov's dog-like reactions in people, where they are so manipulated that they begin to act and think in an altered manner. Now, not quite as scientific as is used by, for example, the CIA and others. But nonetheless, that was the intent. And those that were so manipulated, Bastiat pointed to the fact they want to bring about an artificial kind of society. He said socialism is that artificial society. And if needs be, to get there, there must be turbulence, class warfare, the destruction of the old order, the guillotine, then so be it. Now, that was his conclusions. Let's see if the same kind of patterns show up here when dealing with the observations of Jacques Vallee, the famous researcher of the 60s. Donna Higby, Dr. Donna Higby, hypnotherapist. Doctors Jordan and Clark of MUFON. And there were others. What was it that they concluded? I already told you that we've already mentioned that Dr. Jacques Vallee concluded that the antics of the UFOs were, in fact, strategic. A Trojan Horse operation is underway. They don't just sit in the sky and show up to create a wow effect. Yes, they're sensationalistic, but they're acting in a strategic. They're acting in concert with one another toward a strategic end. And so the Trojan Horse is designed to show up with, well, what was it that the people of Troy saw? They saw this magnificent gift, purportedly a parting gift from the Greeks, a gift of admiration. In this magnificent and beautiful Trojan horse, as we now call it. But inside the horse, there was a tactical approach to dismantling the Trojan society. Begin by giving the gift, a very silent gift, just like the UFOs. Bringing it inside, and the men inside the Trojan horse waited for all the celebrations of Troy. We'll get drunk and going to sleep. And deep into the night, they came out, slew the few watchmen, opened the gates, and the Greek army attacked. Troy was destroyed. That's the kind of conclusion that Jacques Vallee drew was, in fact, the tactical result sought by the UFOs, which meant, he said, these are beings that are saying that they're the good guys when they do communicate, but actually are malevolent and they're liars. Now, he didn't know. He didn't know that it was Satan. Others, like those at MUFON, did draw the conclusion. Dr. Jordan and Clark, early on, did draw the conclusion. They noticed the biblical information on demonic possession, for example, and likened it to much of what they saw in the abductees, those that are abducted. They said, the Bible ponders with the point. In fact, they were just looking for the truth like everyone else, they said. And what they would find would cause, inside the UFO abduction phenomenon, they said they couldn't view it any differently once they realized what the game was. They couldn't view it the same way as they had before, meaning through more humanistic glasses, secularized. It was the research they did and the data they found made believers out of them. They became believers. Because only the Bible, they found, could explain the kind of phenomenon they were running up against. Well, they found a few other things, too. They found that when the abductees were terrorized, now you can imagine this, whatever it is, comes upon them, comes upon a person. There are thousands of these now around the world. When it comes upon them, they're terrorized by it. There's countless tales of terror. Despite the nonsense that we are here for your benefit, they terrorize. That's one of Satan's trademarks. He's a liar. He's a murderer. The sandwich in between those two words would be his character as a terrorist. But they noticed something about UFO phenomenon. This occurred all over the world. And a Christian researcher by the name of Dr. Gary Bates came to the same conclusion. What was it? That those who were being abducted, those who are in the midst of the terror of one of these things. I mean, it could have been a spaceship-like creation, but something that drew near to them. And they had this experience and communication with them, usually bright lights and some energy force and all that. Typical sci-fi, except that it's for real. But when that came upon them, many of them remembered their childhood and the fact that when they went to church, they learned something about Jesus Christ. Universally, what Jordan and Clark found, and others, was that when people called upon the name of the Lord Jesus, exclusively his name, these things would disappear immediately. Not once, not twice, but in what I understand now to be several thousand instances, and fellow researchers, prestigious colleagues, talking about psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists of all sorts, doctors, medical people, government people, colleagues in the field, ran up against the same conclusion. Somebody would say, well, it was Satan. I called upon the name of the Lord. When they used the name of Christ or identified the devil as what the UFO really was, these colleagues found the same kind of reaction. Problem is, they wouldn't publish it. It was shared verbally, mouth to mouth, verbal communications, but very private, because the colleagues didn't want to ruin their reputation. They didn't want to buck the official humanist secular standard that there is no supernatural out there. Not during the heyday of the 60s and 70s and well into the 80s, when we were still secular humanism, where that was the religion of America. Now, part of the strategy of the UFOs has, in fact, taken place. You see, the idea was first a Trojan horse. Then the idea was the creation of a new kind of man or woman. Dr. Donna Higby, hypnotherapist, saw this, described it as altered personalities. But these altered personalities, and there would be many of them, were moving in a concerted effort to alter society, as Bastiat called it, the creation of an artificial society. Now, artificial does not mean here it didn't exist. It means that it was other than normal. Bastiat concluded that centralized authority, socialism, in all the different forms. Now, of course, we know those today, whether it's the French version of socialism for the French revolutions, and there were 3 of those, or whether it's monarchical socialism like Louis XIV of France, or of Nebuchadnezzar, or of the pharaohs of Egypt, the very same ones that captured all the productivity of a people. As slaves, they'd build their pyramids and their buildings and their palaces, minister to their armies, that kind of control. Or whether it's Nazi socialism, National Socialism, like Hitler was a Satanist, and Himmler is a Satanist, or whether it's institutional socialism like in America. Institutional socialism simply means the state creates each institution, a corporation, gives it, as our Supreme Court has said, full rights as a, quote, person, unquote. Therefore, the corporation is itself deemed to have civil liberties. In fact, has many more rights and powers than the average person will ever have. You see, the construction of an altered or artificial society, step by step. And as Lenin pointed out, there would be those behind the scenes, the real power mongers of the warfare welfare state, who are Satanists. And Lenin pointed out that they seek, and he added quite supernaturally, to gain control of the credit, the money, the loan markets, the production of money through centralized banking, and thereby then through regulation. He named a few of them. He called them supernaturally and naturally geniuses. That's Vladimir Lenin, the so-called atheist, founder of the USSR, the Bolshevik Revolution, along with Stalin and Trotsky. They, of course, claimed to be followers of Karl Marx, who officially, publicly called himself an atheist, but was in fact a Satanist, just like his fellow revolutionary, fellow by the name of Proudhon, a man who simply wanted to destroy society and then rebuild from there, of course, socialistically. Note the artificiality of the new society. Right now, they're doing that very same thing, creating new kinds of genders, for example, destroying sex within marriage by altering the marriage institution, redefining it, redefining gender relationships. A lot of Hollywood is presenting, of course, the superhuman woman or the extraordinary woman who gets it done. And don't get me wrong, I believe in the power that God gives for male and female. Being made in God's image makes you powerful. But God's word is clear about his calling for women and for men. Hollywood has reversed much of that, engineering a new kind of woman, almost like a superwoman, be she a policewoman. It seems like the men are always in the background while the woman is the wise one, the one that's always solving the problems, the one who's always avant-garde, always in front, always the revolutionary, always better than the men, or at least they're equal. And equal here is not designed as one, might put it, one before the law. That would be impartial, by the way. No two people are equal. Everyone has different callings. So getting back to the UFOs, these researchers came to startling conclusions, in fact, quite early. They predicted the rise of a new kind of society, one that would create a new kind of religion, for example. That came off the lips of several of these in their writings. New Age has been very successful in creating a new kind of religion. With that comes the environmentalist movement, which is not about trying to save, shall we say, resources. That's the come on. Ultimately, it's trying to save Mother Earth, Gaia. And many of those in the driver's seat know they can't quite get that revolution of Mother Earth out there. Most people as yet aren't there. But alter the way in which people handle the environment step by step. Muzzle those who are opposed and alter the success of the society. And environmentalism certainly is doing that, damaging businesses after business after business, creating massive unemployment, making mandates. We hear that electric cars will be mandated. There'll be a point, not too distant future, in which gasoline engines will be illegal. No thought as to what it does to the poor, but you have to understand. The step-by-step of Satan is this, because we left out a final point. The Trojan Horse gets him inside the civilization. By them, I mean demonia, positions of principalities, powers, and spiritual wickedness in high places. From there, they begin to create and manipulate men and women. Kind of like, again, Pavlov's dogs. You reward some and you punish others. Now with drugs and sex and other vices that are allowed and are even protected at least to the degree that the courts don't slap them hard, they allow it to continue. The United States government is not involved in trying to stop drugs coming into the country so much as it is trying to establish an order, an acceptable order of entry or of quantities, trying to control it to some extent. So altering personalities to create the artificial man or woman. Of course, they're trying to do that biologically. The whole trans movement is about altering genders, and the confusion that it creates legally. Men's and women's bathrooms, all that getting altered, and then the lawsuits that follow. All of that is designed to break down a constitutionally and free society and encumber it with chaotic, even contradictory legal systems within it. So you create an artificial society, but on the way there, you break down the constitutional free market or free enterprise society. You want to break down individualism that resists this revolution. And that is exactly what they've got through the social engineering of the public schools, through the social engineering of the judiciary. Now, of course, we get cameras to monitor our steps in a police state. The final step for the artificial society is to control every human being's calling. By calling, I mean, what is it that the state wants you to do or to be? From birth to the grave. The state wants and lusts for your talents, for your insights, for your labor. And the state will tell you where you are to work. A la Karl Marx, the creation of industrial and the creation of agricultural hosts, or armies as he called it, where the state finances and dictates whole armies of people and where they will go and what they will do. There'll be no thought of family life. That gets disrupted. A husband might go, say, to Alaska, which, by the way, is the leading state when it comes, I understand, to UFO phenomenon. But they might go to Alaska, and the wife might go to Louisiana. And the children in the foster care till they're old enough, and the state will dictate where they go. Well, we've not gotten there yet. Praise God that there is resistance in those that are identifying this kind of behavior. I believe we will go toward martial law. Then there's no need for it either, unless there's a turbulence created within society where the protections of society are broken down, just like with the drug trade. The courts just don't deal with the criminals. They slapped them, and, 2 months later, they're back out in the street, or sooner. The judiciary leads the revolution. The schools create the revolution. The families are blamed for the aberrant behavior or rebellious behavior of the kids, and the state swoops in and takes charge of the kids in one way or another, at least seeks to. All of this is satanic. The goal for Satan is to destroy any semblance of the Christianized society like ours, establish a new religion which will establish a new kind of ethic. New kind of ethic is already well underway. Living together is popular. It's a replacement. Sex outside marriage is a replacement for marriage as an ethic, for calling. State knows that most of those who live together are simply going to try each other on. Then they'll find another partner, and that's part of the ethic. Nothing is stable. The generation gap of the 1960s that developed was part and parcel of this revolution. The generation gap of the boomers who produced the millennials, siring a generation that would rise up to a great extent, hate their parents. Schools and other agencies teaching them to step away from parents, find their families collectively amongst their peers. The Bible in the book of Malachi at the very end says, is a warning that ultimately be John the Baptist that would begin to fulfill it. God would call a prophet who would seek to turn the hearts of the fathers to the sons to the fathers, lest I strike the land with a curse. See, when the families are disrupted, you have children hating, or at least neglecting parents, and parents the same. When parents don't know how to raise the kids, the hearts of the fathers and the sons wander from each other, or more aggressively hate each other, abuse each other, curse each other. When that becomes the norm for a land, God will bring in heavy artillery. He brings in judgment. You can certainly see Satan's interest in all this. If he gains jurisdiction, he gets to accuse all of this. So a new ethic, a new kind of religion, all that is engendered by the newly established, what Bastiat called the artificial society, having the state and its various agencies and institutions rework human consciousness, human affections, human beliefs, and create altered personalities. Create the artificial personality. Remember what Bastiat said? He said, it's not that these lovers of centralized government who claim to love humanity. It's not that they love humanity. They love the idea of a humanity that's an artificial construct, their imagination. Anything that is what you and I would call normal is an obstruction, and they hate that. They point to that and they call it exploitive, unjust. They call it evil. They teach other societies to point at each other and call the norms, well, every imaginable evil. Societies like this, as they move to the artificial construct, trade human beings. Women in particular become commodities for trade. Women learn early on to trade themselves in order to get gain from men. Men learn the game, and they find that a lot of women are cheap. So they can get more from certain women and not have to give up much. People are trading. They trade their morality, or whatever morality there is, for a new kind of society. They trade partners. The kids trade them in for their own peers. That becomes their new family. Family is encouraged among peer groups in schools, fraternities, military, police, government agencies, families. The word family is attached. A brotherhood. And I understand the proper use of a brotherhood, for example, among the Marines. But, men that are in war together have to have each other's sex, as they say. But it's become more than that. Everything but the historic Christian family can become family. And the hearts of the fathers and the sons are separated out either through neglect or aggressiveness. The final result is a torn society that moves toward the occult for its, quote, healing. The church needs to awaken to her peril. Bastiat was right. He feared it would lead to the destruction of France, and in fact, it did. In 1870, France was overwhelmed by the newly established United Germany. France would be overwhelmed in World War I and World War II and would not survive those unless other allies had come to her rescue. She simply wasn't strong enough for the beasts that assailed her. In fact, in World War II, a good part of her became Vichy France, controlled by the Nazis or directly occupied. And all those that did so, whether it's Kaiser Wilhelm, World War I, the ruler of the Germans who was a spiritist, or whether it's Hitler and Himmler, and the Nazis, and the SS, who overwhelmed France, and they were Satanists, or others that fell victim to the same kind of dehumanizing attack on society, like under Lenin in Russia, under Mao Zedong in China, all over the earth. And what do we get as a result? Albania's communistic, it throws that off, and what do we get? Mafias, cartels, former KGB, who make a lot of money creating their own crime syndicates. Satan has broken down society. He has shattered the traditional bonds of covenant and love. And America's churches, many around the world, just sit there. We blink. We say and we do nothing. And retreat into our enclaves. I think Bastiat had it right. So did Jacques Vallee, Dr. Donna Higby, Jordan and Clark at the original MUFON back in the late 60s, early 70s. They had it right. They studied it. They knew this was alien. And as Vallee said, yeah, they're aliens. And Jordan and Clark agreed. Yeah, they're aliens, all right, but they've always been here. They're not from some distant planet X. These are aliens, alien to human nature. But they've always been here since the beginning. May God bless you.
This has been Choke Points Through Time with Dr. Wayne Sedlak. Visit us at visionviewpoint.com, where you'll find a host of articles, books, and videos designed to answer any questions you may have. Join us Tuesdays and Fridays for Choke Points Through Time with Dr. Wayne Sedlak.